It's Paul Marsh here on Express. Delighted to say that I've been joined by Rob Auton. Rob, how are you doing?
Hi, Paul. Yes, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good, very good. Now, I know that this sort of doesn't really do a lot for our radio listeners right now, but we're speaking via Zoom. The last time I saw you, or certainly a viral clip on Facebook anyway, you had a big, huge beard. It's been trimmed a little.
It has been trimmed a bit. It has. That video on Facebook did do the rounds, and
Mm.
that was an interesting experience, I can tell you that.
I can imagine. I've spoke to various comedians recently about, the viral thing that's really taken off in the last couple of years with comedians, and whether it's a minute or 30 seconds or 4 minutes or whatever it is, but a part of their show that literally catches and goes viral, and that's exactly what happened for you, isn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, it happened recently on Instagram. I was doing a bit from my show called The Sky Show, where basically I say, where does the sky start? Does the sky start where the ground stops? What's this bit? And then I wave my hand in front of my face. And it lasts about 15 seconds. And the thing is, that 15-second clip, it went round and it got, I don't know, a million views, whatever. But it took me from 8,000 to 16,000 followers on Instagram. And they are now coming to the show, the
There you
tour
go.
show,
There you
which
go.
is ridiculous. It's just amazing the power of Instagram. I guess because everyone's so tapped into their phones,
Yes.
um, that it's but yeah,
But I
yeah,
was I was talking to Simon Brodkin last year about this, about when something gets picked up viral, whether it's like you say TikTok, Instagram, whatever it is, and the question is this spoiling the show, or things have changed recently? Before, when you used to go and watch a comedian, you didn't want to know anything. You wanted a completely new show. You wanted completely fresh laughs. Whereas if you go and see a band and they don't play your favorite song, you're thoroughly disappointed. Now, of course, with the likes of Mickey Flanagan and Out Out and all of that kind of stuff, it has now become like certain comedians have their favorite little skits that if they don't do it in the show, people leave disappointed.
yeah. No, definitely. I think the thing with this show that I'm doing is that I do half an hour at the start, which is kind of all my tried and tested material from my old shows, and and then we have an interval, and I do an hour of stuff that none of that's been online or anything like that. So, but the difference between, say, like the first time Mickey Flanagan or whatever would have done the out material, and it was really cooking, and people were hearing it for the first time, that laughter would have been so loud. And
Yeah.
then, it's like when you hear something, it's never the same. It has to be that surprise, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A surprise element is what with laughter. And I think that's it with songs, because they're not meant to be funny. Then I mean, comedy songs, I can't listen to them more than once anyway, most of the time.
It's funny, isn't it? You got certain artists like Weird Al and people like that who have literally made an entire career off that. And I'm the same with you. I love a comedy song, but once you've heard it two or three times, it's kind of lost the humor. It's got to be a decent song.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And but hopefully there'll be some. I haven't got any comedy songs in my show. Oh, I mean, there's a bit of chanting, singing. Yeah, yeah.
So you are down here in Portsmouth on Thursday, the 14th of March, playing at the Portsmouth Guildhall. What can people expect from your show?
They can expect it. It's an hour-long show. Well, it's an hour and a half, but the Rob Auton show that I'm touring is an hour-long show. It's my 10th one in a series of shows that I've done. I did always do shows on specific themes. The first show I ever did was all about the color yellow, called The Yellow Show, and then I did a show all about the sky called The Sky Show. Then faces, then water, then sleeping, then hair, then talking, then time, then crowds. And this is the 10th one in a series of shows on specific themes. And it's a show that's all about me, really. It's a lot of firsts. It's about first memories, first girlfriends, first jobs, first gigs. And it's kind of even though it's my 10th one, I feel like it's the best introduction, the best in it's a good introduction, basically. Even I should have started with this one
I was just
instead of
about
doing
to
a show all about the color yellow. Like when I was scraping the barrel after 10 years, I'd be like, oh, maybe I'll just do a show about the color yellow now.
say.
I've done it the wrong way around.
But then you've had 10 years or whatever it's been of growing, so there's probably a lot more to talk about now.
Exactly. And I feel like I've got a more perspective on things that have happened, like in my childhood and university and everything like that. I feel a lot more equipped to be able to talk about them in a effective, engaging way. And because I've done a lot of work in progress shows of these shows, I've kind of whittled down all the stuff that doesn't work, and I've just got hopefully now all the lines that I want to say. And it's a mix of it's a mix of emotions. The show, I think, it's a funny show. I'd like to say it's a funny show, but I want to try to get people thinking and feeling more than just laughter in the show. I like my favourite nights out at the pub are ones where you have a laugh, but you also have a bit of a heart to heart, and you leave thinking, oh yeah, that was a really good wholesome night actually, and that's definitely what I'll try to achieve with my shows for sure.
But it's funny you should talk about that because, again, on this show, I do the mid morning show. So I do a lot of mental health interviews and bits and pieces like that. And I've been talking to a few psychologists and what have you. And we say about men, especially who go down the pub, and we do that joke about, he's my best mate and I haven't got a clue what his wife does. And I don't know what he does on this day. I don't know his kids' names and all of that, because we go down the pub, we have a few pints, and we just laugh nonstop without actually getting to talk to people. And that's what people are doing a little bit more of now, actually talking about things that matter. So do you think that's quite important in comedy? That yeah, I spoke to Dom Jolly a couple of weeks ago, and he said that, punching up, when we're having a laugh, when we're talking about let's do it about things that actually matter.
Hmm. I think so. I think for me, I don't really know about punching up and punching down, but I know for a fact that for me, comedy has always just been about not so much trying to make people laugh, but just sharing what I found funny and seeing if other people find it funny as well. And but with regard to talking about mental health and things like that, I do think that I've always tried to keep my shows quite vague in what they are. Not like it's a comedy show, guys. It's more of like I'd put like comedy slash theatre slash spoken word. So it gives me a very big field to kind of run around in, and I can do whatever I want basically. And so I think all my favorite programs like the UK Office, my favorite bits in that. Well, my favorite bit is when Dawn's in the back of the car and she gets the pencil crayons out or whatever, and it's from Tim, and they say "Don't give up," and like the heartfelt moments in Only Fools and Horses where Del Boy's out on the balcony and he's looking up at the moon with his baby in his arms. I think that there's a real need for like light and shade in comedy for sure, and that's what all my favorite stuff in the royal family as well, and all those programs and the detectorists, and it's a mix, and it kind of makes it more rich, and that's what I definitely try to strive for
Is
is
that is that why you wanted to make this show about yourself, so you could get a little bit more personal?
yeah, 100%. I think that I felt, as I said before, I felt kind of ready to it's weird, I've spoke to my mum and dad about a lot of the memories, and they can't remember them. They remember them completely different to how I do. And that's something that I found really interesting. Of if you speak to your friends about certain nights out and things like that, then 9 times out of 10 they would have a different recollection of it. And
Completely,
that thing
yeah.
about a memory changing every time you remember it, I'm really intrigued by that. And just how, I don't know, I find it fascinating how certain things kind of latch onto your brain like a limpet or whatever, and other stuff just bounces off. And certain people remember certain things, and that's been a really interesting experience when I was writing the show about thinking about stuff that's happened. And even if it's just like first jobs and like mum and dad picking me up from the restaurant in York I used to work in, and yeah. No, it's interesting. I've loved it actually. It's been I think the best thing about it is hearing about people after the show when they start telling me about their lives, and yeah, it's great.
It's quite surprising when you think about what goes on in your own personal life, and you think, well, this is only happening to me, or only I have this experience. And it's quite surprising, really, that most of our experiences are shared by so many people that we don't even realize it.
Absolutely. Well, this is it. It's this thing of everyone having so much in common. And because I just think that, I'm always thinking about how small we are, and if the sky goes on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, and then we're kind of sitting there on the tube and no one's speaking to each other. It amazes me, but that's obviously what we've got to do is like coping mechanisms. But yeah, it's incredible that I think the more specific you get with things as well, the more that, like, one thing that I said in my show of a few years ago was like, nothing ripens a banana quicker than a rucksack, and that was something that people are like, yeah, everyone's had that,
Yep, spot on. Yeah,
and
yeah, exactly.
just trying to um I don't just experiment with what people connect with and what they don't. And I've got, like, there's another line where I say, if you accidentally drop a satsuma into a bowl of hummus, it'll be the quietest thing you've heard in absolutely ages, which isn't as big a laugh, but people kind of go, oh yeah, I can imagine that will be quiet.
But
But
that's it. Yeah, you visualize it, don't you? You
yeah,
visualize.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now, 10 years ago, you won funniest joke at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Now, this is something that every single year it always gets announced as the funniest joke of the festival. Now,
Mm,
as a radio presenter, this is something I will read out yearly. How
mm.
much of an effect on your life does that have?
It's ridiculous the amount of exposure that you get for that. With regard to, luckily enough, that year in 2013, I was doing a show about the sky in the back room of a pub in Edinburgh. And it was a mix of poetry and comedy. And I hadn't actually been saying the joke in the show. It was in like a 10-minute spot at lunchtime where there was about four people in the room. It just so happened that Bruce DeSalle from the Evening Standard was in the room, and he was the head judge for the joke of the Fringe. And uh anyway, yeah, it just threw me into this kind of I've been in the newspapers for the first time and things like that, and nothing. In answer to your question, it changed absolutely nothing. Luckily, the room was full from people come to the show anyway, and the people who wanted to get there to hear the joke, it wasn't in the show. So it was interesting, really. But I remember one time I was on the, you have to do so many interviews for that. I was on Radio 2 speaking to Vanessa Feltz, and she went, "Oh, tell us another joke then." And she caught me kind of off guard, and I just said, "Oh, I don't really have any." And she went, "What?" And I said, "Well, I've got this. This is
Yeah.
called breakfast." And I said, "Oh, this is called breakfast. I knew the outside world had ended when I poured milk on my Rice Krispies and they made no sound." And she went, "Well, that's just sad." So I've got that on my posters now. Just sad, Vanessa Feltz. And
Now that's an endorsement.
exactly. Do you know what? In Deborah Meaden came to my show in last year, and that was really funny because I've got a line in one of my shows that was I want to set up a business, and then I knew that she was there, and I said, "Oh, Deborah, listen to this. I've got a business idea. I want to set up a business in Torquay doing walking tours where people on the tour are all in touch via portable radios. But I just can't think of a suitable name for the business. Obviously, walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And what reaction did that get from Deborah?
well, Deborah, funnily enough, she was a really good sport, and she kind of got up out of her chair when I said I've got a business idea, and she was started shuffling along the rows. I was like, "No, Deborah, you're not coming on stage." But yeah, she seemed like an absolute legend.
It's funny, isn't it? It's one of those professions, a comedian. As soon as you say you're a comedian, the immediate response is, "Oh, you're a comedian. Tell me a joke." It's very similar to being on the radio. You say, "Oh, I'm a radio presenter," and they go, "Oh, what do do your bit?" And you go, "Well, it doesn't really work like that. I can't introduce Rick Astley into Rihanna or whatever. It doesn't work like that."
No, but yeah, it's interesting. Of hopefully now I've kind of got enough stuff but I very rarely do I say that I'm a comedian. I just say, oh, I'm a writer and performer, and then people don't say anything.
Yeah, because I haven't got a clue what to say after that.
No, they're like, oh yeah, Yeah, yeah,
Anyway.
yeah. Anyway,
Well, look, Rob, it's been absolutely superb talking to you. Thank you very much for talking to me. Again, you are at the Portsmouth Guildhall on Thursday, the 14th of March. I believe there are literally just a handful of tickets left. So if you fancy going out for a brilliant night out, then I highly recommend that one. Rob, thank you so much for talking to me.
thank you. Thanks for having me, Paul.